how well did you treat each other during the storm? And if you didn't treat each other well during the storm, at least hopefully you came back together after the storm with compassion, forgiveness, vulnerability.
Yeah.
I think vulnerability is the key.
All I remember experiencing was walking down the stairs. I had no context in terms of what that might have looked like. I didn't know like if she was hurt or not. So I start going through a catastrophization. My emotional flooding. I'm freaking out essentially. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals from all over the world, welcome back to the one and only Conscious Couples podcast. For episode number 54, we are talking about, and I quote, when disaster strikes, we ... We've got a hell of a story for you. So before we jump into this episode, as always, thank you so much, Next Level Podcast Solutions, for producing this show. We appreciate you. Sweetheart, what is your intention for today's episode?
My intention is for our listeners and our conscious couples community to be able to look at when disaster strikes for them and their partners, really to shift the focus into what happens after, because to the ... this is kind of like a fill in the blank. And I think that when we shift the focus over to this through our story, I hope that it will give all of our listeners the opportunity to kind of shift into what would their action plan be in something like this. So I'm excited to share our personal story, even though cue the mini PTSD.
Yeah.
But I think that it'll be really good for our listeners.
Okay, so I am in the middle of a work day. And I randomly, why did I go downstairs? Do we remember? Oh, I had bugs.
You had the
bugs. Yeah, I'm not embarrassed by that. That's totally fine. She gave me the booger signal for those of you who are on YouTube. Yeah, I'm not embarrassed about my bugs. So I had a booger, and I needed to get a Q-tip and or toilet paper or whatever tissue.
Yeah.
Whatever you use to get your boogers. Yeah, vacuum. So I go downstairs into the bedroom, which during front-facing media coaching, work day, you name it, we keep Tariel and Tucker in the bedroom downstairs. And so I go down there, and normally I don't, although we do usually let them out a couple times throughout the day and XYZ.
Yeah.
And so I go down there, and I'm with Tucker, and he's so excited to see his dad. He's wagging his tail, and I spend some time with them. And all of a sudden, Tariel does this cute thing. Tariel's our kitten, by the way. Our friend Tariel does this cute thing where she lays out. No, I'm kidding. So Tariel's our kitten, and she does this cute thing where she'll kind of like be like, "Hey, Dad," and then all of a sudden she'll flop onto the floor, kind of gracefully, like, "Come pet me and love on me." And I'm like, "Okay, interesting. What's that around her neck? What's going on here?"
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, okay, something's different. And I get closer, a little bit closer. And I'm like, oh my God, she has glass around her neck. And I connected the dots actually quite quickly.
Yeah.
Emilia that morning had a cup of water near the sink in the bedroom. And makes perfect sense. No big deal. Cup of water in the sink near the bedroom.
Right.
Tariel loves water. I know a lot of cats don't love water. She loves water. And I don't know if that's a myth or whatever. I don't know a lot about cats. But Tariel loves water. So what she did is she tried to drink the water from the bottom of the glass. And this is one of those sort of like oval-shaped, pear-shaped glasses. Yeah. And so she essentially, what happened, I think, is she got her head stuck in the glass, got up, and then jumped down off the sink, and then shattered the glass. But the glass only shattered the butt end of the glass, for lack of better phrasing, and it left this sharded glass necklace around her neck. And so I'm like, And so Emilia could sense my tonality. I came out. I said, "Sweetheart, I need help." And so you immediately came down, and then I went to the toolbox in the garage to try to get pliers to get this glass shard necklace off. And so we're at the sink and we're kind of in, somewhat of a panic mode because obviously Tariel means so much to us.
Yeah.
And at any time she could cut her neck, and that would be very terrible.
That would be the worst.
Fortunately, nothing ended up happening. But what we wanted to talk about in this episode is when tragedies or challenges, disasters strikes, we ... And Emilia, I want you to share your perspective because she thinks there was a pretty unkind moment of her at the sink when we were trying to get the glass off her neck.
Yeah.
And afterwards, she was very sweet about it. But
not proud about this was not my finest hour for sure. So I was in the middle of actually just about to jump on a call with my executive assistant. And typically I'll take the lunch shift, taking the beasts, we call them, out to exercise, to play, to go to the bathroom and everything. And so at that moment when I was just about to get on a call, Alan knocks on my door and you could just see on his face pale white, and like we call it like SEAL team look, where like there is nothing but seriousness that needs to be happening right now. And I could tell he was in SEAL team mood.
In reference to Navy SEALs, aka we need results immediately. Something is wrong.
We need to be on the same team. We need to figure this out, right? No fluffy, no emotions, no are you feeling okay, whatever. It's just exactly results, high degree of pressure. So I saw his face and I just remember my heart literally, like I am typically the queen of emotional regulation and I get that compliment a lot. I started to panic. I started to freak out. My heartbeat went through the roof because usually you're not super calm. And I think that that's maybe like in those situations, usually I'm more calm. You're more panicked. And so it was interesting because I think the roles flipped because I saw you calm.
But I usually am calm in the Navy SEAL moments.
True.
Like if you think about the
Navy
mountain
SEAls
that we climbed, and I was very calm in that too. So I think that you're not maybe used to how calm I get in those situations. Whereas quite frankly, and I'll just be honest, there are other times when we're unpacking stuff and we're talking and you're more emotionally regulated typically than I am when it comes to certain little things
like uncertainty.
When it comes to really tragic things, I'm actually fairly calm. And I think some of that goes to my childhood
for sure
of just like game time.
So anyways, you're walking like slowly down the stairs and I'm behind you and I'm freaking out like, what is it, what happened? I don't even know because we didn't even exchange a lot of words. You're just like, babe, I need your help, like extremely
Tariel has glass
around her neck. Okay, so I don't even know if I heard that. All I remember experiencing was walking down the stairs. I had no context in terms of what that might have looked like. I didn't know like if she was hurt or not. So I start going through a catastrophization, my emotional flooding. I'm freaking out essentially. And I know that when I'm in a freaked out state, Tucker, our dog, starts to mirror me, right? So he starts to freak out too. So we open up the door and there Tariel is just hunching down with, like Alan said, it literally was like a glass crown turned upside down to become a glass shard collar.
Yeah, it's very, very mathematically low probability that she doesn't get cut. I mean, it was definitely life or death situation.
It literally was.
Yeah.
And like
for Tariel.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this YouTube video, you can literally see like my hands are on either side of my neck. Like that's how much the shards, if she just did anything differently, she would have been dead. Like honestly, it was that bad. And of course, in that moment, you need to remain calm because cats already, like, if they're like off, they can be really skittish. So me knowing that and having that awareness, I need to really calm myself. And it was so difficult. So then immediately pick Tariel up and then you shift into like, okay, now she's in your arms. How do we assess the situation? The shards is anything sticking into her neck? No. Holy crap, that's amazing. Thank Mother Earth that didn't happen. But now that she's in our arm, okay, you shift into Navy SEAL, pick her up, regulate Tucker, separate them so that Tucker doesn't bark and doesn't freak her out. But also then between you and I, how do we now get this thing off of her head? And so immediately we went over to kind of the sink because I was thinking, well, when this breaks, I don't want any of it getting into her, or I don't want it on the ground and then Tucker getting it or whatever. And I didn't want to hurt us in the process. So it was like super high pressure. Bring her over to the sink. If glass is going to fall or if she is going to get cut, we're going to want to clean it, wrap it up, all that stuff. So there's a million things going through my head. And you're trying to be so sweet because you have, like, you're not the one holding her. And we shifted immediately into, okay, we got to get this thing off her neck. And our first thought was, we got to get pliers. We got to get something. You were thinking of a hammer.
We have pliers actually in the kitchen because I have these sparkling cider bottles that I open with pliers because it's obnoxious how tight these things are. And also, my grip is not manly enough, apparently. I'm just joking. But so we go there. Then right after that, I go, so you're at the sink and I immediately go to the toolbox in the garage. By the time I get back from the garage, fortunately, you were able to slide it off?
Yeah.
Or she snuck her head through?
So that happened. But before that happened, you were there with the
pliers,
glass, with the pliers. And I could tell at the angle that was happening, there was a high probability of if he applied pressure in a specific way, that would have cut Tariel in her neck. If she moved, like there was way too many if. And so in that moment, that's where I was extremely unkind for my personal standards, the way that I treat Alan. So this was the disaster striking component. It already struck. Now, how are we handling it through that and then afterwards?
Hi, Amy and Chris Lennius here to give a quick moment of appreciation for Alan and Emilia. We have been working with them for a few months now, maybe 6, maybe going on 6 months now, and we appreciate you guys so much. To see you guys work as a team, to help couples work as a team, is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. Not only have you helped us reconnect and helped us with our marriage, you've also helped us through big life moments, with boundaries, with creating our own stable unit at home. We appreciate you guys so, so much.
Yes, truly heartfelt appreciate you guys and everything you've done for us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
We love you.
So in that moment, I had said so directly, and I'm embarrassed about it now, but I think it's important to talk about. I had said so directly, babe, I need you to be effective. Like I was so aggressive in my tonality, no fluff around that. And that's literally while my honey has the pliers on the rim of this glass that's around her neck. Talk about like completely unempathetic for your position in that situation where like obviously the pressure's on. You would feel terrible if anything were to happen because you're the one applying the pressure and I'm just holding her. So in that, it was like we both kind of were, you're like, honey, I'm trying. And it was like, you and I were you've never done anything like that.
I never had a cat, and I've definitely
never. You don't even know how to be effective in that. Yeah. So it's like that was
brand new
so
situation.
Unfair.
I'm not a glass necklace cat crown cutter person guy. You know, it's like I've never.
But I need you to be.
Yeah, but I need you to be. Yeah.
Right. So in
understandable though.
I mean, I celebrated after of how like effective I was at direct communication of my needs, but like obviously we need us to be effective, right? So like just the way that I said
I know
that was not fair. And then afterwards, I think we both realized that like that too much, too hard. And then that's when you left. You were like, I got to go get another tool. So you went into the garage, which thankfully kitchen and garage are very close. But in that time period, I was just like, if she got her head in this at a specific angle, I believe in myself, we can get off. And literally within split seconds after you had left, I got off her neck and I was just hanging in the sink of like complete panic. And I think I like almost started crying. Like, I don't even know if there was space to cry, but like internally I was crying because it was like a massive experience of relief that she was okay. And she like hopped off and she was like fine. She was like, what's all the fuss about?
Yeah, she didn't even know anything was wrong.
But it was also just like you came back in with the pliers. I'm like, she's okay. And we were like trembling. And I just felt so shameful after that moment. And it was way more guilt. I transitioned that shame into guilt really quickly. And the difference between shame and guilt is shame is I am a bad person, and guilt is I made a bad decision.
There you go.
And so I know that I'm not a bad person, right? I know I didn't communicate to Alan in the regard that I hold in terms of standards. And while yes, my communication was very direct, and yes, I did express the need that was very obvious, that was not fair to my honey, and it was such an imperfect moment. But why we want to bring this up for all of us is because what happened after the disaster. Now, granted, all of that worked out in our favor where nothing terrible happened, right? Like Tariel didn't even get a cut on her, but it made us really focus in on the ... part. When disaster strikes, we ... I was really proud of how much you and I were a team in that and how much it was SEAL Team Go, but not so proud of how we communicated to each other. We were understanding of that type of communication. But afterwards, when we had the experience of like, oh no, we were imperfect in that moment. It was the guilt afterwards of like, I treated you so poorly to my standards. Can you forgive me? I'm so sorry. Like, it's those moments after disaster strikes that you can process through as a couple. But you were so sweet to me, and you gave me tons of words of reassurance that we're okay. We're just glad we're okay. And you also accepted my apology, which was really important to me too. Because at the end of the day, it's like, we're going to be imperfect when disaster strikes, but it's what happens afterwards. And it's traumatizing to think about what could have happened to Tariel, to you, to us, and all of that. And thankfully, like I said, the outcome was good, but afterwards, that's what mattered way more to me, because at the end of the day, like, that's our relationship, and we honor and protected it to the best of our ability. And when we were imperfect, we were still kind.
And so for our listeners, if you can think back to a situation that you and your partner have had, and you know, maybe it was with your children, or maybe it was with your pets, or maybe it was some other catastrophe or disaster, or, and again, disaster is a strong word. Maybe it was a car accident, whatever, you know, how well did you treat each other during the storm? And if you didn't treat each other well during the storm, at least hopefully you came back together after the storm with compassion, forgiveness, vulnerability. Yeah. I think vulnerability is the key, because it was, I mean, babe, no worries, genuinely. And you know, you weren't that unkind from my perspective. But again, I think my Richter scale is a little off on that based on some of my past. Yeah. But what I would say is, of course, love, I'm not expecting you to be perfect. I mean, no one's ever, you know, perfect when they're in that much challenge and that much time pressure, because every moment with her with the glass shards around her neck is a moment she could get really hurt. Right. And obviously we care so much about Tariel. So I think it's all love underneath it. And I think that's one thing to remember too, is that underneath it is just love. And so I easily could be mean or use that against you, or you treated me mean or whatever. But I think that that's crap, because I'm grateful that you care about her so much that you're unkind to me, but obviously underneath that is just your love for our pet, which is so sweet. So I think it's important to see that. And then at the same time, you hold yourself to such a high standard that I know I don't have to like lay into you or anything like that. I don't ever want to. Whereas honestly, and this is interesting, if you have a partner that is not like that and doesn't have any standards for how they treat you, you should not react the way I did. Right. Which I think is important, because I've had partners in the past that have zero standards for how they treat me, and I accepted that.
And they'll kick you when you're down too. Yeah. They'll make you feel even worse about yourself. And that's something you didn't do, which I was so grateful
no way,
for.
Love. No way. And I know you've dealt with that a lot in the past. Sure. And that's not fair. And that's when you're vulnerable and taking ownership, and then that ownership gets used against you. Yeah. To take back power or whatever that nonsense is, which is just a losing game. So we hope that you all are able to glean something from this. When disaster strikes, have you come up with a plan, or have you analyzed when disaster strikes, what that looks like? And then more importantly, how do you, when the storm ends, how do you come back together and learn from it? Yeah. And, you know, and I'll share this, and this is kind of funny, but I got rid of all of those glasses.
You did.
So I even got rid of other glasses that we shouldn't get rid of.
Any glass in the house.
Yeah.
Literally
no glass, only plastic
cups.
Those
are my favorite glasses too. Like, because I have small hands, so it's like the pear glasses were like perfect for my hand. Yeah. So like, I'm a little salty about that. And it was like, we had a moment in the kitchen where like, you're like, babe, I got rid of all the glass. And I was like, I was so selfish. I was like, why? Like, you're like, Tariel, we did just have that like disaster the other week. I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Well, in your head, you're like, well, we can just remember.
Right.
And it's like, sweetheart, we're not going to necessarily remember. If we leave anything at the bottom of those that glass, she's going to stick her head in again.
Yeah, that's not conscious parenting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so again, at the end of the day, it's funny. And I ended up throwing out a couple plates, not throwing them out, but donating. Yeah. So you can learn from it. You can improve. At the end of the day, bad things are going to happen. Yeah. You know, how do you treat each other during the storm? If you treat each other poorly during the storm, at least come back together after the storm and take ownership. Yeah. And so hopefully this was helpful for all of you. Before we go, I do want to share with everyone that we do have a Relationship Talks virtual event coming up. Ooh. It is our 21st event in a row. This is creating financial goals with your partner. The 3 number one things statistically people fight about in intimate relationships is children, sex, and money. And so one of the things that you can solve is getting on the same financial page, and we're going to help you do that. So we hope you join us. The link to register will be in the show notes. And again, you can participate a ton, keep your camera on, participate, ask questions, or you can, slink into the background, no problems at all. You can keep your microphone off, you can keep your camera off, and just listen in. Everything in between, you are totally welcome. Maybe you start out with camera off and microphone off, and then maybe in the future, after you dip your toe in, maybe you participate more, but no obligation whatsoever.
Absolutely. That will be March 9th, which is a Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Zoom. So make sure you register ahead in advance. That link will be in the show notes, as well as the link to Alan and I's calendar, which, like we say in every single episode, we really, really do mean it. We've been able to connect with some incredible listeners. So this is 30 minutes every single Saturday that Alan and I make sure that we allocate on our calendar for our Conscious Couples listeners. And what this is a safe, free space. If you're struggling in anything, intimate relationships, anything that we've talked about on this podcast episode that you want to go deeper into, say, for example, you've been to an event and you want to connect with us on a little bit deeper level, this is a safe, completely private and free for you, allocated to be able to really work through some of those things. And I guarantee, it's just Alan and I, super casual, and trying to share with you what we've learned and help you through whatever challenge that you're struggling with. Because quite frankly, not a lot of people provide that safe space in general. And we know we certainly wish we had that growing up. So that is also in the show notes, book on our calendar every single Saturday, half hour dedicated completely for free to you.
So before we go, thank you again for listening to another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. And as always, it is not about you or me. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is Lazaros88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.